we've learned up till now. So what we talk about today won't be on tomorrow's quiz, but we still need to talk about it. All right, so what did you do first here? Remember, there are lots of ways to start, so you can start however you want. I know who you are. Jamie?
I flipped the top and bottom.
The whole fraction. You can do that because of this, right? So one way to begin is just to take everything on the bottom and everything on the top and switch them.
Let's do.
Now, do you have to start that way? Absolutely not, but that's one way to start, right? Okay. What'd you do next, Jamie?
I just did this.
So you squared everything in there, and again, you don't have to do that next, but it's a perfectly okay way to start. So that would be, now don't forget the 4 and the 3 too, so that would be 16, x to the 14th, y to the 20th, is everybody okay with that? Over 9, remember guys, slow to 3, x to the negative 6th, y to the 10th. Okay? Teresa, what would you do next?
I would cancel out the x's and the y's, so it would be x to the 20th on top.
Exactly, combine those two, so you've got 16 ninths, and then you're gonna bring these guys to the top, so that's gonna give you 20.
And then I would cancel out the y's and get x to the y to the 10th on top.
Exactly, perfect. How many of you got that answer? Did I give you enough time to finish? Good work, very good. Anybody who didn't get that answer have an issue? You don't have to do everything in the order that they did it here. This order is fine, but you can do other stuff. Did anybody simplify inside the parentheses first? I sometimes do that, so I don't have to write so much. So that's another way to start if you want to. Okay, how about this one? Do you remember that a circle has an equation that looks like this? Okay, you got to remember that if you're going to end up with this, the equation of a circle. You have to know you have an x quantity squared plus a y quantity squared equal to a number. And this number always represents the radius squared. So since they tell you the center, can't you build part of your equation just right off the bat? So it's going to be x plus 1, y minus 2. Right off the bat, we have that much. Now, how are we going to get our radius out of this? They didn't tell me the radius. Trevor? Because the situation is this. You have a center at negative 1, 2, and the circle contains the point 3, 4. So Trevor says if we use the distance formula, that will give us the radius. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So here we go. Distance formula says what? X minus x. So 3 minus negative 1, you can do that in any order. I did 3 minus negative 1. You could do negative 1 minus 3. Plus, right? Plus 4 minus 2. So let's see, what do we got here? That would be 4, 16. And that would be 2, 4. So the radius is root 20. Now, don't bother simplifying that. I know it reduces to 2 root 5. Don't do that, because you don't even need the root 20. What do you need? The 20, because in the blank, in the equation equals the radius squared. Everybody okay with that?
I didn't do the distance formula, I just plugged in the blank into the
Into here?
Yeah.
Yeah, and, oh, that will absolutely work, because isn't that really the same thing as I have here? You put, this, when you put 3 in here, that's what you did, right? You put 3 in here, so you got 4 squared, you're gonna get exactly the same thing I'm gonna get. Yes, indeed. Good thinking. homework, were there any questions about any of the problems in the homework? Dan?
49.
49. This is an inequality. Okay, so Dan, what did you try?
I don't know. I erased my work. I didn't get friends.
Okay. Well, don't ever do that, because then we can't figure out what you did wrong. So looking at it now, what would you think might be a strategy?
Maybe times everything by 12.
I think that would be an awesome idea. Timesing everything by 12. I think that's great, because 4 goes into 12 3 times. So we're gonna have 3 times x minus 5 plus 4 times 3 minus 2x is less than negative 24. I think that's perfect. So then we can distribute carefully. 3x minus 15 plus 12 minus 8x is less than negative 24. Negative 5x minus 3. So we'll add 3. Watch it now. Divide by negative 5 will change that. So I got x is greater than 21/5.
Yeah. I had the problem written down wrong.
Okay, that will cause issues every time. Yes, ma'am.
For that one, I got 5 over 21. So 21 over 5.
Okay, were you down to here? Did you get down to here?
I mean, I don't know necessarily what I did wrong. Because I just think I did it a different way.
No, you got 21/5, because you're gonna, at this point, right here, you're gonna divide both sides by 5. So you're gonna have 21 over 5.
So I did it correctly though? Just
Mhm.
the answer wrong? Okay.
Okay, anybody else have a question about a homework problem? Jamie? All right, let's take a look at number 27, which is kind of like the one we just did, only it's an equation. Okay, so what'd you do, Jamie? It's okay to get a common denominator. It's not what flips my switch, because I'd rather just get rid of the fractions altogether. So I'm going to find a common denominator, but then instead of putting every fraction over it, I'm just going to multiply by it, so I don't have any fractions to worry about. So the common denominator with 8, 2, and 3 would be 24. Yeah. So we'll multiply everything by 24. This is the least common denominator, not the only common denominator. All right, so we have 3 times t plus 5 minus 12 times t minus 2 equal to 8. Now, Jamie, does that make sense to you, what I just did?
Yeah.
So now I'll distribute carefully. And I end up with negative 9t plus 39 equals 8. Keep an eye on my arithmetic. Don't let me make a careless mistake. I got 31 ninths. T equals 31 ninths. Okay, one more. Bailey.
Number 25.
25. Okay, what'd you do with 25, Bailey?
I tried to get rid of the denominator, but then I couldn't remember if I had to
5/1. And this is 3x/1. So I'm gonna go ahead and write those numbers as fractions. So what is my common denominator if I have 4, 1, and 1? Just 4. So I'm going to be multiplying everything by just 4. So this will cancel totally and leave me with 2x minus 3. This will leave me with 20, and this will leave me with 12x. Oh, I got 17/10 as my answer. I think sometimes we mess these up because we try to do too much in our head, so it doesn't hurt you to actually physically write down what you're multiplying by instead of trying to do that in your head. Sometimes it helps to actually see it. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Something near and dear to your hearts. We're going to talk about equations of lines. Equations of lines. When I say that to you, what pops into your head? Something. Y, so what pops into our head is y equals mx plus b. A graph, which maybe, I guess, would look like this maybe or something, okay? When we say y equals mx plus b, what do we mean by m? So that's your slope. And what do we mean by b? Y-intercept. So that ties directly into the graph because this would be b, right? And the slope indicates as you move from point to point, how many steps up and over you take, right? So let's build the equation of a line with 2 points. So let's see if you can remember how to write the equation of the line through -1, 2, and 3, 8. Does anybody remember? Now, this is what you're shooting for. Okay, so somehow you're going to have to figure out the slope and the y-intercept. Anybody remember? Bailey?
Or find the slope first.
We got to find the slope first. And you remember how to find the slope? Exactly. We're going to subtract our x's, or subtract our y's, and subtract our x's, and build that fraction. Now, I wasn't paying close enough attention. I think she said y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. Is it okay in either order? Yes, as long as you do them both in the same order. So if you're going to do 1 minus 2 for the y's, then you have to do 1 minus 2 for the x's. You have to. We're not squaring here, so the order matters. So for us, the slope would be 8 minus 2 over 3 minus -1, or 6/4, or 3/2. So our slope is 3/2. Alrighty. Now what? Who remembers? Riley?
You pick a point and then you plug that into the equation with 3/2 as the end.
So one strategy, and I don't, if this is how you all do it, then that's the only way we're going to do it. One strategy is to say, okay, I'm going to take my slope-intercept form. This is called the slope-intercept form. And I am simply going to plug what I know into that equation. So if I pick a point, that is my y and my x. My m is 3/2. The only thing I don't know is my y-intercept. Now, there are other ways to do this. Is this how some of you do it? Obviously, it's how you do it. Is this how some of you do this? So then we do our solving. So what's 3 halves times 3? 9 halves. That's 16 halves. So what is B? 7 halves. So your equation would be y equals 3 halves x plus 7 halves. Now, does anybody do that problem differently? Everybody does it that way? Oh, it's gonna be a long, hard year for Mrs. Ford, because I don't do it that way, but I'll get in the habit of doing it that way. I use point slope. Anybody remember point slope? I would do, when I write my equations, I would say y minus h equals 3 halves, x minus 3. That's my favorite way, but I'll give it up for you guys, it's okay. Our goal is to get the answer, and we got it. That was pretty easy. Oh my. Oh my, gosh, turn my phone off. What do you think about this equation? Or this situation? Anybody have a thought on that? Write the equation line parallel to something, so we're shooting for the same thing, right? We're shooting for y equals mx plus b. What do you think? Katie? Plug -2,5 into this equation? Well, I could, but I'm gonna get -2, when I plug it in, I'm gonna get, this is not going to come out to equal 5. What am I gonna do then? I'm gonna call on new people here. Let's see, I've lost my seating chart. I don't know where I put my seating chart. Okay, so there it is. Grace.
You put that equation, the 3x plus 2y equals 5, you put that in slope-intercept form.
So in other words, take this equation and solve for y. All right, now you're going to have to explain to me why you're choosing to do this, Grace. It's done. I have taken the given equation. Grace said get it in slope-intercept form, which means solve for y. Got it. Now, why did you want me to do that?
Because when lines are parallel, they have the same slope.
Oh. So in order to answer the question, I need to know what slope to use, and Grace says we're going to use -3 halves. All right. Then what, Grace?
Then you plug in the coordinates like you did last time, so 5, and then -3, and then that'll be 2.
Would this be +3? Yep. So B works out to be 2. And your equation is y equals -3 halves x plus 2. Beautiful work. What if we changed this word to perpendicular? What would change? Only one thing.
The slope would be the negative reciprocal.
So instead of using -3 halves as my slope, I would use +2 2/3. Everybody remembers that? All right, I'm gonna look at a couple of things in tonight's homework, and if we have time, we'll practice a little bit more for the quiz. would you look on page 40? Actually, it's on 41. Look at problem number 45. Number 45. Sometimes the way we write stuff mathematically makes it seem much more confusing than it is. You are being asked to write an equation in this problem. For the value of the house at time t. Does anybody have any idea how we might do this? What did it take to write the equations of the lines we just did? The problem I just erased, it took points, right? Are there points in this problem? Now, remember, the way the variables are set up, your points aren't necessarily going to be x and y, they're going to be t comma v. So do you see some points in the problem? Mahela? No, that's not right. No, I need Jamie.
8 and 42,000.
I couldn't hear, what was the first part?
8 and 42,000.
Okay. Then what would your other point be? That one has me a little bit confused. But what would your other point be? Well, we'll see if that works, if we can make that work. What would your other one be? Because you need 2, right? We need 2.
0 and 67,500.
Would you switch the 8 and 0?
Yeah, let's talk about this for a sec. Yes, I think it's better to switch the 8 and the 0. But let's talk about what's going to happen here. When I find the slope of this, which I presume is what we're going to be doing, right, to write the equation. If I take this minus this, I'll get a positive number. But if I take this minus this, I'll get a negative number. So this line has a negative slope. How do I know that's wrong? Yeah, the values are going up. So I got the 8 and the 0 switched. At the beginning, before any time passed, at the very beginning of the problem, the value of the, whatever it is, was 42,000. 8 years later, its value is 67,000. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Even though these two numbers were written close together in the problem, they don't go together. This is 0, this goes with 0, this goes with 8. All right, so let's evaluate it. So what would the slope be? You might need a calculator. I don't know, maybe not. Probably I will. Yeah. If you have your calculators today, go ahead and get them out because the next problem asks us, or the next part of the problem asks us to do some graphing on our calculators. I got a slope of 25,500 over 8. Which is 3187.5. So my slope is 3,187.5. So my equation is y equals 387.5x
V.
T plus 42,000. How in the world did Mrs. Ford know if the Y-intercept was 42,000, I didn't work it all out. How did I know that was 42,000, Trevor?
Because the X is 0.
Exactly. Where's that point? If you graphed that point, where would it be, you guys? On the y-axis, which means it's the y-intercept. Now, if you went through the work here to find B, would you get that? Absolutely. I'm lazy. If I don't have to do it, I'm not going to. They gave me the y-intercept, so I'm going to plug it in. There's my equation. Okay, step 1 complete. Step 2, graph it and trace to estimate how many years, after how many years the purchase of the house will be worth 42.5, or the house will be 42.5. All right, so let's get our calculators out. Now let's see what you know about graphing. If you don't have your calculator, you need to sit by somebody who does, because you are responsible. Do we have a calculator at every pod? So we can cluster around each other? Figure it out, you guys. Okay, step 1. On your calculator, right here, you got a Y equals button. Everybody find it? My finger's on it. Got it? Press it. That is the button where you put equations into the calculator. So go ahead and type this in. You won't put a T, you'll put an X. The X is your variable button. It's right there where my finger is. It's in the second row, the second button over. That's your variable button. So you're going to press 3187.5 and then X plus 42,000. All right, if you can't get it, lean over to your neighbor and see if your neighbor can. But we got to have our equation in. Everybody got it in? We're putting in this equation, put on the calculator. That'll be a Y, and this will be an X. Everybody got it? Okay, the next thing we have to do is set our window. Our window is in the top row of buttons, right under the screen. It's the second one over. So we're going to press window. Now, I have absolutely no idea how your window is set right now. But the problem tells me that my X's are to be between 0 and 15. So for X min, I'm going to put 0. For X max, I'm going to put 15. Let's just leave our scale at 1, X scale. Now, where did the 0 and the 15 come from? Not magic, it's written in the problem, right? Okay, I didn't make it up, it's written in the problem. Now, the Y's are not written in the problem, so I am going to have to make those up. What is the lowest value this house could ever have? Even if there is a huge crash in real estate values, the lowest value this is a house, right? This house could ever have is 0. So I'm going to set my Y minimum at 0. It's never going to go below 0. This is a pretty good slope. This represents every year the house is going up in value $3,000, right? So it's going to go up a lot. So I'm going to set over 15 years. So I'm going to set Y max at 100,000. Now that is a made up number, just coming out of my head thinking, I gotta have something pretty big. Trevor? If we're gonna have the same last name, you're gonna keep your eyes open. You should be enthusiastic. 100,000, all right? X scale 1, or Y scale, I mean 1. All right, hit graph. Your graph button is right over here. Did you get a picture that looks like this? This is your t-axis, so this represents the years, and this is the value axis. Now, hit the trace button, which is right next to the graph button, and the cursor comes in. And all you have to do is press your arrow buttons. These are your arrow buttons right here. And you can follow along. So press it until, what's the question say? 72.5. Now, down at the bottom, it says x equals y equals. As you trace along, which one do you want to be 72.5? The y. That's the value. You're probably not going to get it exactly, but that's okay. Get as close as you can. For 72.5, I got 9.574.
Yeah.
So what's the answer to the question? After about 9.6 years? Next question. Write and solve an equation algebraically to determine how many years after purchase this house will be worth $74,000. Now, could you do 74,000 with your trace feature? Yes, but they're saying, no, not this time. Now we want to do it without a calculator. We want to do it algebraically now. So how would we do that? Remember, this is your equation. What would you do, Dan?
Would you put 74,000 into the y?
You absolutely would.
Yeah, then it's plus b at the end of that. So,
You absolutely would. That is exactly right. Very, very good. So we will simply solve this equation. I'm going to use a calculator. We'll solve that equation. Subtracting 42,000. I got about 10 years. Did you get about 10 years?
yeah.
And then the last question's the same thing, just a different number, so we don't need to do it. Okay? Now, one more thing. Would you look with me at number 31? Number 31, I'd actually assign, because I want you to get used to interpreting graphs on your calculator. So somebody has graphed picture A and somebody has graphed picture B. The lines look exactly the same, don't they? But underneath, you will see that the windows are set differently. So in the first picture, the X's are from negative 10 to 10, and the Y's are from negative 15 to 15. So Y min is negative 15, Y max is positive 15 on the calculator. In the second one, the window is set a little bit differently. So those lines are not the same. They look the same because of the way we set up the calculator, but they are not the same. Your job is to figure out which one has the greater slope. Any thoughts on that?
B.
And why would you say B?
Because if it goes up like 15, I don't know, it seems to be.
Okay, actually it's A.
Dang.
And here's
Oh, yeah.
why. In A, the X's are 10, so this is 10, and this is 15. So what would the slope of that line be? If you just use these 2 points, 0, 0, and 10, 15, the slope of that line would be 15 over 10, or 3/2. Would you agree with me? The other picture, this is 10, and this is 10. So what's the slope of that line? That slope is just 1. So which one has the greater slope? This one, 1.5. All right, I think you should be able to handle the rest of these guys. Okay, so let's do, we got time for a couple review questions. Can you think of something? I gave you a couple at the beginning of the period, remember? So what did I give you? I gave you an exponent, simplification, and a circle circle that involved distance formula, right? Okay, so can you think of anything else in the last 3 days or 4 days, how many days of school we had, that we maybe should review because it could potentially be on the quiz? Mahela?
Absolute value.
Absolute value. Solving an absolute value equation. Now, I do want to emphasize, I am going to expect you to be able to solve this equation. But I don't care how you do it, as long as you're not cheating. I don't care how you do it. When I solve this equation, I'm going to look at this right here and think, well, that is the distance between some number, we'll call it x, and 3. Because that's what distance on the number line is. It's absolute value of difference. So here's 3. I want that distance to be 5. So I'm going to come out this way and I'm going to come back this way 5 units. The distance is 5. So the farthest, or this point out here would be 8, and this point back here would be -2. Now I either want to consider the numbers in between -2 and 8, or outside of -2 and 8. This says the distance is more than 5. Here's where it's exactly 5. I want it to be more than 5, so my answer would be less than -2 or greater than 8. Now, no matter how you do the problem, this must be the answer that you come up with. So as long as you're getting this answer, you are good. Okay, Mahela, let's use one more of those, and then we'll take somebody else if you got another. Let's do this one. Threw a curveball in here, because in order to do this on the number line, this has to be a difference.
I was just asking, why is it or? Because it's outside?
Well, it's or because it wouldn't make any sense to be and. You can't have numbers here and at the same time they are here. There are no numbers that are both less than -2 and greater than 8.
Okay.
Now, there are numbers that are, like if you had this situation, you can be greater than -2 and less than 8.
Okay.
You can be both. Here you can't be, so that's got to be
Okay.
more. I always kind of, when I'm teaching younger kids and trying to get them to remember all this, I always say, if your graph has 2 pieces, then your answer must have 2 pieces. And anytime your answer has 2 pieces, it's got to be this or this, because you can never put them together.
Okay.
So if your graph is in 2, your answer is going to be in 2. Okay, back to this one. If I'm going to do this on the number line, that has to be a difference. So what do I do?
-4.
X minus -4?
Yep. I just change it to a difference. So now this is -4. The distance between some number and -4 is 2. So I'll count 2 both ways. Those will be solid dots this time. And this time I want the distance to be less than 2. So my answer will be all of the x's in between -6 and -2. Interval notation for this, that's another kind of review thing. Interval notation would be the brackets. Can anybody think of anything else we need to talk about?
Can we review the interval notation, please?
Well, we just did this one. Closed interval is the bracket, right? If we somehow did a problem, it would never happen with one of these, but if we somehow did a problem and we ended up with an answer that looked like this, that will never happen with one of these, but it could happen in another situation. In interval notation, we would have a bracket at 6, but a parentheses at 11, because the 11 is open. And if we got an answer that looked like this, understanding that means everything to the left of 4, we would have a negative infinity to 4 with a bracket.
But how do you know which number goes in which spot?
They go in the order they come on the number line. Always the same order they come on the number line. So obviously negative infinity comes before 4.
So smallest first?
Yep.
Okay.
Would there be interval notation for the exponents or?
There could be. We just did one like that. So this would be negative infinity to negative 2. This would be 8 to positive infinity. And then if we want to be absolutely like real mathematicians would do it, we would put the union symbol, the or symbol. Anybody know what the or symbol is? Just a U. That's the symbol for or. Can you think of anything else we've talked about that's a little perplexing to you? So if we, let's say you score an 80 on your first test and a 92 on your second test. What is your percent of increase? Anybody remember how to do that? Percent of increase, Bailey?
92 minus 80.
Yep, you find the difference and you divide by the original. So in this case, that would be 12 over 80, which is, what is that decimally? 0.15? So what does that represent in terms of a percent of increase? A 15% increase. If you'd gone down, then this would be a negative number, and that would be a percent of decrease.
Would you put that in percent form? Would you put 50%?
If it said find the percent of increase, then yeah, you would want to say 15%.
Okay.
All right. So tomorrow we have Quizy 2. The homework tonight is 2-4. You need to take a picture of somebody. But since you missed so much, I have to have you absent, I go up here, okay? I mean, so that means you have to turn your homework in and stuff like that.
Oh, do you want to see homework? Yeah.
Yeah, if you have today's, I'll check that Ma'am. Okay, I'm gonna have to write you a detention. Because you're not a dependent.
He's gonna be on you all year. He's gonna be on you all year. Oh my not doing homework during all year. They're ready to get
No. Right now. Okay, both of them, you know, are like, I'm like,
Oh, I know what you're about to say.
No, I'm gonna go like dead last.
Every person says that.
On you and Would you mind if I took a picture of your book?
No,
The
sure.
page? I ordered it like the beginning of last week, so I don't know.
Still not here.
No.
I read it, but I don't remember. You want it to be like a don't.
does it goes after lunch? Okay, seriously.
They're doing during lunch. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
professor told you to talk about a level change. They said like I should take the first couple tests if I get really good scores. They said that you should talk to them about it.
Okay, we'll see.
So if I get like 100 on the first two,
Okay, we'll see.
because it's just organization. That's what
Okay. All right, well, we'll see.
You know, it's not about my homework too. Consider it.
We'll see. Okay, Lily Hartman. Can you guys see grades in Power School yet?
Yes.
Oh.
At least I can.
Oh, it's okay.
I've been doing that all my life.
Make sure we're tucked in before you tuck in. And we're sharp. Oh shoot, that thing's still running.
Except like.
Oh, yeah, passing periods in there, right?